Sweden in 1993, Hammerfall are a band that truly reinvigorated the genre, particularly in their native Sweden. Let's remember that in the early 90s it was all about grunge. So for a band to say, you know, we're going to play kind of classic sounding heavy metal, we're going to do the look and the sound of heavy metal, it really seemed like a bad bet for many. And yet, despite all the naysayers, the 1997 debut Glory to the Brave and its follow-up in 1998 Legacy of Kings truly took the metal world by storm. I am therefore extremely fortunate to be today with Mr. Joacim Cans. He is the singer of Hammerfall since 1996. That is 20 years of pure, unadulterated performance of heavy metal. Joacim, thank you very much for joining me today. The first thing that I want to know is about Built to Last, Hammerfall's new album. Tell me about that name. Is it mostly about is it just a name for the album, or rather does it reflect the fact that Hammerfall, despite the challenges, despite the age, despite the hiatus, is a band that is actually built to last?
Yeah, I think you kind of answered the question yourself here, because that is exactly how I see it. I mean, first of all, it's a very solid piece of work that will stand the test of time, that when we look back at this album and maybe 10, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, maybe Hammerfall is not around anymore as a band, but for sure this album and also Hammerfall's like legacy or whatever you will call it in heavy metal history will still be there, because Hammerfall, we built something that will last maybe not forever, but for a very, very long time. So I think it's kind of a combination between, you know, the album itself being a solid piece of work and also the career of Hammerfall that we built up so far, that no matter what happened, you know, we're still standing here stronger than ever, I would say.
Since you talk about the legacy of Hammerfall continuing even after the band eventually ends, how do you think this band will be remembered?
I think that in the history of heavy metal music, that Hammerfall, that we became somewhat pioneers in the mid-90s when heavy metal was, I mean, that was not even a genre anymore. No one really cared about this form of music. People told us, why don't you play music that people want to hear?
All right, mister, what do you think you're doing?
And we always responded, because we play the music we want to play. As simple as that.
I want to rock.
Hammerfall was a band that reopened the door and gave like a new generation of you know, metal fans and also musicians the chance to write and record the music that they love, heavy metal music. Because after Glory to the Brave and Legacy of Kings, it was like a big boom of heavy metal, or people call it power metal, but I still want to refer to it as heavy metal. And if people look back at the career of Hammerfall, this is, I mean, the 10th studio album in 20 years, and we kind of stayed true to ourselves the whole time. Something that the true fans love, and something that the doubters hate, because they said, oh, you need to change, you need to do this, you need to do that. Well, you know what? We just do what we want to do, as simple as that. So I think that is also one of the fundamentals of you know, why Hammerfall will last, even though we won't be around forever.
But why do you think there has been this confusion with Hammerfall and power metal? Is it the use of Hector on the covers? You know, often these covers that are drawn by fantasy artists, like from Warhammer kind of stuff, or the fact that one of your biggest hits, The Dragon Lies Bleeding, mentions the dragon. Of course, paradoxically enough, this is a fantasy element that only appears in that single song, and it doesn't appear anywhere else, and yet that it might have painted you or tainted you even in a certain way, so that people will think that you are the kind of power epic metal band.
I'm not really sure why, because like you said, Dragon was mentioned only a few times, in a title only once. I'm not sure. It could have been that because we were playing, you know, fast songs with a lot of, you know, dual guitars, a lot of harmonies, that we were more flirting with the German side of the heavy metal music, which was a little bit faster. Somehow, I think the Americans labeled this power metal. I'm not really sure how it ended up in Europe, but we always referred to ourselves playing heavy metal music. But we also have to keep in mind that late 90s, early 2000s, all these subgenres came to life, because everyone wanted to play a unique style of heavy metal. You played like epic power metal, it was true heavy metal, it was epic power Hollywood metal for some bands. Like, what the hell is that? I mean, we are all branches of the same tree, a tree called heavy metal, and then we just play our own versions of it. I never made a big deal out of it. When people say, yeah, you play power metal, well, you know what? We play heavy metal, and that's just the way it is. But like I said, I think it's because our main influences came from the German side, and they were a little more powerful, so to speak.
Now, genres are useful to sell CDs. You can clearly put them separately in a store, but beyond that, it's pretty hard to just say what you are. Metallica, for example, they continue to be called a thrash metal band, despite the fact that if you put Kill 'Em All, Master of Puppets, and Ride Lightning on the one hand, and Load, Reload, even Death Magnetic on the other, you cannot really see them as a thrash metal band. So I completely understand why, yeah, for something like Hammerfall, maybe just calling it power metal or this type of metal or another, it's not very useful.
Yeah, I think it's better just to use the last word than metal. I think that sums up everything. Or in our case, melodic, because that is what we're doing. It's melodic metal. As simple as that.
Absolutely. Hammerfall places a lot of emphasis in the melodies, and that's actually one of the things that I really enjoy about the band. I mean, I can deal with some cacophonous music, particularly when it comes to black metal. But I think that what I tend to gravitate towards is the kind of melodic-centric or melody-centric music that bands like Hammerfall put out. So that's really what I love about your band.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing to hear, because I'm also hooked on, good melodies. That is what makes me going. And that is also how I write music. I work with the melodies, because, music is built from rhythm and melodies. That is how how you do music. And if you leave out the melodies, it's kind of that you sometimes lack something. Something is missing.
It's one of those paradoxes, really, because you can find a band that can be extremely proficient in terms of their technicality, the virtuosity of the individual members, and yet they may not get the popularity that a much less talented band will get. A band that creates catchy melodies but are definitely not as good when it comes to their instruments. And I think that it is because there might be a confusion between instrumental talent and songwriting talent. So I think that the lack of an ability to create catchy melodic stuff can really destroy a band, no matter how talented they are. And I think that Hammerfall has really managed to hit a sweet spot between talent on the one hand, and that you undeniably have, and just catchiness and kind of the kind of melodies that are really appealing to a broad metallic audience.
Nice that you say that, because it's every band needs songs, and just because you're a good instrumentalist, let's say you're one of the greatest guitar players in the world, you invested 8 hours a day just practicing, then you miss out on another thing called songwriting, because that is a different cup of tea, and that takes a lot of experience, or not experience, a lot of trial and errors, I would say, before you will become a complete songwriter. I mean, I listened to a lot of stuff I did 20, 25 years ago, and I mean, I wouldn't, if I wrote those songs today, they wouldn't sound the way they did back then. But then on the other hand, there was still a learning experience, and I developed my skills throughout the years. And where I am now, I see myself as a more complete songwriter. But on the other hand, I'm draining myself, and that is also something that comes with age. I mean, this is the 10th Hammerfall album, and I did songs for other artists. I did solo albums, and I don't know how many hundreds of songs I've done. And it's getting harder and harder to write a song, because where do you start?
But is it because you think that you risk repeating yourself?
Well, that's always a big risk. But that's why it's so good that I'm working so close with Oscar Dronjak, that we co-writing everything more or less. And when I get stuck with something where I think something I wrote is horrible, I just send him a file and say something about this. Is it good? Is it bad? Should I continue? Should I kill myself?
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Then I say, you know what? This is a fantastic piece of work you've done here, melody-wise. So leave it. Thank you. Then I can move on, because I'm always comparing to everything else I've done, and it's hard sometimes to understand have I written this before or is it new? I don't know.
But has it happened to you that when you look back at your career, you know, this 20 years of music with Hammerfall, that there are songs that you are simply unsatisfied with?
Of course, but it doesn't really matter how I feel now. The most important thing is how I feel when I wrote it, because I never give away or give out something that I'm not satisfied with. So if you take a song from Legacy of Kings, for instance, back then I was 100% satisfied. Now, looking back at it, I could say that, well, maybe some of the songs needed a little more attention, but I didn't know better then.
Every album is a snapshot of as good as it was when you made it, I guess. So I completely understand your point, yeah.
Yeah, I think that is what happens to every band. If you listen to like a lot of bands first, like the debut albums, they're young, there's a lot of emotions in there. Maybe the guitar playing is not 100%. Maybe a couple of songs are not really that good. But still, it's the first album and it's everything. I mean, life is a learning experience. You learn and you try things and you fail. You try, you fail. But still, you move on.
That's a very good message. Now, going back to Built to Last, and despite what you say about becoming older, the truth is that here is one of your best vocal performances. In fact, might be one of the highest notes that you reach, right? With the song Sacred Vow. I mean, you don't sound older at all. But do you think that making this type of stuff has become harder for you as time passes, or have you been able to sort of avoid that kind of problems?
The weird thing is that it is the total opposite to that. And I mean, I've seen a lot of other singers in other bands, friends of mine, that are, you know, they're losing their height in their voice, and I think that is kind of what happens with a male voice, that you lose the height and kind of you get a little more limited the older you get. But up until this date, I have gone the other way for some weird reason. Maybe because I'm kind of a guy that takes care of his voice. I am not the person who parties until 6 o'clock in the morning. I do that sometimes, but only once in a while. So I try to take care of my voice. I take care of my body. I'm a vegetarian. I'm running. I'm going to the gym. I take care of my whole body. And maybe that is like the secret recipe to be able to deliver at the age of 46 the best vocal performance of my career. I don't know. It's but as long as this works, I'm just going to continue what I'm doing. On the other hand, writing songs this high is of course very, very stupid, because then you need to perform them live too. And on a bad day, it might be rough to do a song like The Sacred Vow.
Does it scare you that you might find yourself trying to perform something like this live and that you just fall flat, that you won't be able to do it?
Yeah, of course, it's kind of an emotional suicide. But on the other hand, if I tried and I failed, at least I tried.
You know, if you give me Built to Last, not knowing the band, I wouldn't know that you've been, 20 years in the making, that you've been 20 years touring, performing, etc. It doesn't sound like that. You sound just fresh and capable, as if you had just started.
But that's great that you say that. I'm sucking up everything now, because this makes me really happy, because that is the feeling that we have, especially with Built to Last and the Revolution album. It's a lot of like vitality in that, because we still feel like we are young. I mean, the feeling that we have is that we are still a young band and we have so much more to give. It would be so easy just to, sit down and, hey, okay, let's write a couple of songs. And I think this is the way a lot of bands do it when they've been around for 20, 25 years. They just going to the studio is just a necessary evil, because they just want to go out on tour and play the songs from the first couple of albums that people want to hear. And as long as we can, write good songs that will become instant classics, even though it's 20 years into the career, that is fantastic. Because on this album, I know the song Hammer High, for instance, that will be a song that will be played, I think, for the rest of our career. And many other bands release albums and they go on tour, they play a couple of songs, but they never played those songs live again. So it makes me really happy that you can really hear kind of the youth in the music, that we have so much power inside our old bodies.
I mean, it's just 46, not 75. I think that for every band that has been around for a while, it becomes a concern that you'll try to perform on a tour your new music, and that the fans will be there exclusively to hear what you've already done before in your original albums.
But if people don't want to hear what you've done now, well, the songs are not good enough. As simple as that. No, it's up for the fans to decide, but we will still, go out there on tour now and do 4 songs of the new album about. And I think you have to find like a balance when you make a set list. A balance that you play the songs that the fans want to hear. That's very important. But you also play the songs that you want to play yourself. And then you put something unexpected in there. And they have like the 3 basic elements that we use when we do a set list.
When you started, as we have discussed, people mocked the idea that you would be playing heavy metal at a time when heavy metal was clearly not selling well, right? It was not a genre that people thought was marketable anymore. So since there was that fear on the part of labels, I guess, producers, etc., since then, has there still been sometimes appeals on the part of the industry, part of the music industry, to shape your music to make it more appealing to a broader audience?
Okay, Hammerfall have been self-managed 18 out of 20 years, I would say, or even more. We had 2 different managers for a very short period of time, and that didn't work at all. When it comes to the record labels, this is actually very, very funny, that we worked with Nuclear Blast first for the first 9 albums. They never heard one song before the final mix was done for each album, because they trusted Hammerfall so much that they know that we will deliver something really, really good. The same thing was now with Napalm. They didn't hear one song until we delivered the final master. And the only reply I got, thank you. This is exactly what we were hoping for. So it's you can't really, that would never work. If someone from a label would come in and disturb us in the writing process, we would probably cancel the deal and tell them to fuck off and go and get another band, because they signed us because they believe that we have the power to write and record something very, very unique. And if they sign us and want to change us, hey, they should try, they should sign someone else.
Built to Last is the 3rd time that you record vocals in LA with James Michaels from 6 a.m. Why did you go all the way there to do it again?
Well, for one main reason, that he lives in Los Angeles. I had to go to him to work. This is actually the 3rd album in a row I work with James. He lived in Nashville before. So for Infected, I went to Nashville. And with James, it's like I found the perfect partner in the studio. A guy, he's a very talented producer and a very talented songwriter, a person that I look up to. So when he tells me, well, maybe you should try and do it like this, he's talking out of his own experience, because he is a singer himself. And that makes it so much easier for me. I mean, we could record this in Gothenburg with someone else, but I'm really certain that it wouldn't turn out as good as it did with James on these last 3 albums, because he makes it so damn comfortable for me in the studio. And it's such a joy to work with him. I read an interview with him that he said he's not producing anymore, but they said, you're doing Hammerfall. You know what? That's not work. That's just pleasure, he said. And nowadays, I mean, the vocals are so damn important on an album that if you come up with crappy vocal sounds and it's, like, what the hell is this? That's going to kill the whole album.
I get it. I mean, it would be impossible to have a Hammerfall album that doesn't put vocals at the forefront, or at least that doesn't prioritize them and places them in a very important section of the music. Having said that, since 6 a.m. is so different from Hammerfall, it's nice to see that his knowledge and talents are transferred so well between genres. Considering that this is, according to you, your best vocal performance, it seems to be a pretty good collaboration so far, and I'm glad that you've been able to continue doing it.
Absolutely. I mean, he would never change my style or change anything like that. He's just making me the best version of myself. And that is what a producer should do.
Now, before I let you go, a few years ago, you went into a hiatus, right? The whole Hammerfall went into a hiatus. And around that time, you had all of these management issues, all of the problems that we discussed at the beginning of the interview. Now, I have read that the existence of the band altogether was at stake, that there was a real possibility that Hammerfall could simply cease to exist. Is that true?
I mean, when we did the tour for Infected, we just went, that was with the second manager in a very short period of time. Nothing was fun anymore. And the day it's not fun to stand on stage, the moment it's not fun to be in a band anymore, I don't see a reason, to continue. And I think somehow we reached the end of the road, and we just said, you know what, if we're going to be able to pursue this career, we need to take a break. We need to tell everyone in the band to fuck off and let's talk in 1 year. And that is exactly what we did. And during this year, we barely talked. We just said, you know what, I'm so tired of this. We need just to sit down and reflect on the career we had so far, because it's been an amazing ride. But the moment you stop enjoying it, something is wrong. And after this year, I think everyone came back hungrier than ever. And let me tell you, the album Revolution, it was the easiest album to write, I would say, because some songs just wrote themselves, because we were so hungry, we were so satisfied that we were back together, and about to hit the roads. That album and that tour was one of the most successful albums and tours we've ever done.
Joacim, I think that I've taken enough of your time as it is. I really appreciate it. I know that you have probably other interviews to do, so thank you very much for joining me today, and I will see you on tour probably, if I'm not mistaken, in early 2017. Take care, man.
Well, thank you very much. You too. Bye-bye.
So thank you very much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this interview and that you will join us next time, because we have more interviews, more videos about photography coming very soon. Remember that if you want to support us, you can just go to our Patreon and donate directly to Metal Blast so that we can make metal great again. I am Jay for Metal Blast, and until we meet again, stay metal.